Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk about something that at one point in your life will affect you. All different ways it can affect you, all different ways it can crop up. And what is it? It's grief. There's many different situations where you may grieve. You may still be grieving, not even realize it. And she can definitely help you get to the core of that and navigate through it as a certified hypnotherapist and also a life coach. And she's back with us. It is Sabrina Perez on the program. Welcome back, Sabrina. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Steve. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm well. I'm good. And
Good.
it's one of those, talking grief, it's never a happy subject, but it can be if you can get through it and navigate through it. But there are all types of grief. When we say that word right away, somebody thinks typically the passing of a loved one, but there are many, many, many different types of ways that people grieve, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. Grieving an illness, an injury, job
Relationship.
loss,
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah. All
Yeah.
kinds of loss that we grieve. And it's definitely different ways we grieve those losses. It's all different for
Yeah.
everybody and every loss.
And everybody
Mhm.
deals with it way differently, radically. I have a very close friend dealing with a loss in the last year and a half. And she's moved from here to here in that process. But I guess
Mhm.
that's the word. It's a process.
It is. It is. It's a journey.
Hmm. How do
Mhm.
you know? Let's
Yeah, the process, the journey is unique to everybody, the experience. Um, what got me into wanting to help people through loss is my own experience through losing my husband of 23 years. And it was sudden. We were sleeping and I felt a jolt against my side and woke up to his pupils fully dilated, gasping for air. And as he took his last breath, I desperately tried to perform CPR, and unfortunately, it was not successful. And our 4 children, we had 4 kids, left shattered, and our lives were completely changed forever. And everything fell on my shoulders at that point. And I had felt like I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, I can't do this. I didn't know who I was without him. We've been married 23 years.
mm,
And, so half my life was with him. And he was our rock. He just was a strong man. And it was tough. And 7 months later, my mom died from a terminal diagnosis. So
wow.
that year was, yeah, intense and a lot of loss and a lot of processing, let's say. And I cycled through pain and numbness and just became a shell of who I'd known myself to be in that time frame until I realized I needed to change some things and change the way I was thinking and change the way I was acting to save my shattered family. My kids were affected by this. And it was a lot. It's so interesting how when you have a big loss like that, a huge loss, where you're at in your own life affects the process too, and where I was in my own belief system was affecting how I was handling my grieving through that loss. And I jumped into my own healing and really looked at some things and decided, wow, I need to start working on myself. Yeah. And then one day I was in the kitchen doing dishes and I found myself on the kitchen floor, hands covered in lemon scented dish soap, sobbing like I'd never cried before. And there was this part of me that wanted to like just get up, shove it down, and walk away. Like, this is too much pain. I can't feel it. It's going to break me. I can't. And so I wanted to, but a voice inside me said, stay, just stay. You need to feel this all the way through. And then I saw this like doorway in my mind's eye, and I knew that that was the doorway of my grief. that I needed to walk through it and go through it. So I stayed there on the floor and I did, and I cried and I cried, thinking I'm not going to survive this pain, like physically, even just feeling like this is too much. But it was just amazing when I finally let myself go all the way through that. I got up and I couldn't believe it. I felt stronger. I felt lighter.
Mm.
And I was like, wow. It's then that I realized that one needs, when they're faced with that intense emotional pain, that we need to go through it and fully feel it in order to really heal. And that was a real turning point for me, and an acceptance and an ability to allow myself to feel everything I was feeling. And in grief, there's the stages of grief. It used to be 5 when it was for, any grief. But now there's, some new thoughts that there's more than just 5 stages of grief. There's 7 when it's losing a loved one. When you've lost a loved one, you go through the shock and then denial and anger. And that's a real strong emotion when we go through that anger. And it's a lot the same as that feeling of the intense pain is you need to allow it and you need to be okay with it and accept it and let those feelings come and feel them, not be afraid of them. Again, like what persists, what we resist in emotions, pushing them down, they persist. They come back up. They come back up stronger.
Yep.
And they don't always manifest in the most healthy ways when we don't let ourselves feel them and experience them. So that's
lots of questions.
okay, let's go for it.
Can I ask you how long ago that your mom and your husband passed?
Yeah, that was 10 years ago this May that my husband passed away, and then my mom passed away December. Yeah.
Did you
So
feel almost guilty for wanting to fully grieve? By that, I mean, was it more you're saying, wait a minute, I have to be strong here. I got, 4 children. I can only go so far. I'm going to stay strong, and didn't allow yourself to just what happened. What on the kitchen floor, it just happened because you got to the point where it needed to happen. But do you feel that you didn't allow yourself to do it because you needed to stay strong?
I think that I was afraid of it.
And
I was
that too.
afraid it was going to break me.
Yeah. Well,
I think it
because
was,
if it broke
yeah,
you,
I couldn't continue on to be, and to be the mom, I actually took over the landscape company that we own too and ran that. So I was doing a lot, but
hmm,
interestingly enough, without allowing myself to fully process everything I needed to process, I wasn't there for that, because we grab other ways to cope, and it's not always the best for us
yeah,
or the ones that we love. Yeah.
it's I'm in a relationship with somebody that went through what you went through,
Uh, yeah.
and
Wow.
it's only been 16 months.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
There's a
she's gone
lot.
from here to here, and there's one thing I always say to her: I got you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
It's
I do.
wonderful.
Because I do. And she's like, well, what about this and that, and he took care of this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's there's bigger important things in life. We're good. You're going to be okay. I got you if you
Yes.
have a problem. It's the
Yes.
it'll all work out. And I'm sure you've
Hmm.
been through that, where it's like, how could, what am I going to do now? I never took care of that. He took care of
Yeah.
that and all those things.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Totally lost. Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
And feeling, so much though I've learned in the things that I've learned in my training as a life coach and an RTT therapist is our thoughts matter. What we're thinking, like me thinking, I can't do this. This is, I'm not
Yeah.
good enough. I'm not smart enough. That affects what we end up doing and how we end up
Yeah.
handling things, right? And so changing those thoughts changes everything.
Yeah.
But
It's funny. She looks at
it's a
me as
process.
like, the most positive person. Everything is great. And it's almost, I'm afraid to say, like, that's not really bad, but it's all good.
Yes,
But
yes,
when you look at the grieving process, it can be in so many different forms. Let's say a relationship ended suddenly, never saw it coming. And
yeah,
it can
right,
have the same kind of impact of losing somebody
absolutely.
at the same way. How do you know? Obviously, when it's the passing of a loved one,
Mhm.
you're grieving.
Yeah.
When it's something else in
Mm,
life, whether it's a
yeah.
job or,
Yeah.
a relationship that ended or whatever it is, how do you know that you're actually grieving?
It's really interesting that you bring that up because having been through such a huge loss, right, and impactful like grieving process, I recognize it now and I can tell you the signs and I'll tell you what happened where I was like, oh, wait, I'm grieving. That's what this is. So I got in a skiing accident and I injured both knees.
Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa,
And
whoa, whoa. Rewind. Go back to that. You were in a skiing accident
yeah,
while you were grieving. Yes.
no,
This is
this was
before.
just a few years ago. Yeah.
Just a few. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I was in a skiing accident and I tore ligaments in both of my knees in this accident. I actually ran into the back of my son skiing. We were skiing together and he kind of came into the run. I didn't know he was going to be, and he came and I slammed right into the back of him. I was going pretty fast. Thankfully, he didn't get hurt. I had to be sled down the hill.
Yeesh.
I, yeah. So I tore my PCL, my MCL, and my left knee. I tore my right knee, the ACL, and I was pretty banged up. And, you know, it changed my life in a lot of ways. And I was just really struggling with the whole, the injury. It was also quite traumatic. I kept reliving it, kind of like trying to like turn back the clock. You know how when that's part of loss, right? You want to
Mm,
bargaining that. It's got to figure out how for this not to happen.
yep.
But yeah, I realized like, oh, you're grieving this. Okay. And once you realize what that is, then you give yourself permission to do it. You give yourself permission, allowance, acceptance for the fact that, okay, that's what's going on here. And one thing that one of my therapists, when I was grieving, when I was in that loss, I would saw a therapist and a life coach. And one thing he just explained to me, which was really helpful, is he said, grieving is like being on a roller coaster, except you didn't ask to get on, right? So it's not like, woo, here's the hill, yay.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like you just, and that, so it's that feeling of like, where am I? What's going on? Life's happening to me and I can't, it's awful. And so I recognize that feeling of like no control. And
Yeah. And
so,
and highs and lows. You could be at the point
yes,
where you're at the top. Hey, things are okay. I'm gonna do all of a sudden you're down here, and now you're going back up again, then you're back down again. The emotions, I'm sure, especially the loss of somebody like we're talking about, it's all the time.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And then those stages of grief are, certainly not linear, right? I mean, you have feelings, you have the shock, you have the anger, you have denial, it all weaves around. It's just it's not linear. It's very fluid, you
Hmm.
know. Hmm.
When did you realize that through the process in your situation where
Hmm.
I'm good now? It's,
Yeah.
I've done my grieving.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're ever fully done in some regards,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
when did you feel like, all right, I feel more grounded than I ever felt, and I feel that I'm more stable and things are okay.
Yeah. Like I feel whole again.
Yeah.
It was a long process. It certainly was. I don't even know if I could say a when,
Okay.
I think that it's just the thing the thing that's can be so beautiful about the grieving process is it can be open up space for you to really like what it did for me. It opened up the space for me to truly love and know myself. When you have things come into your life that are unexpected, or you don't, depending on how you handle it and how, if you're able to like accept what's happening and journey through it, not fighting it, you're able to really kind of pick up some real golden nuggets about who you are as a person. And I think all of those little things along the way begin to create wholeness, fill those spaces in you to where you're like, wow, I'm a pretty remarkable person. And when you can see that for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
that's huge.
Would you say that that is the game changer when you get to that point where, especially when you've been with somebody so long and they're no longer here? Um,
Yeah,
but okay, I'm using the word especially. It might also be a long relationship and that's done. And now,
absolutely.
you depended on somebody else, same exact kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then you have that realization that I do have me. Me is
Yeah,
okay. I can
exactly.
depend on me. But when
Yeah.
we're in those type of situations and or relationships, you don't see it that way because you were
Mm-mm.
codependent for so long.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah. And if you haven't really understood how wonderful you are,
Hmm.
even, because we can be in those relationships that are so strong and bonded and you're such equals, and still have your own strength of knowing and loving yourself and really appreciating who you are, right? And what you bring to the table. But I find so many people don't have that for themselves. They're not their own best friend.
Yeah.
They're not their own cheerleader. They're not their own, they don't give themselves the praise they deserve or even see it. And it affects how we handle loss.
So did you see those things prior to your loss in you?
No,
Mm.
mm-mm. I didn't.
So
I
why
didn't
why do
know
you
that I was
why do you
missing
think
that.
that is? What do you is would you say maybe it goes back to your childhood that kind of dictated, like they often say, between 0 and 7 in your childhood, things that you experienced, not say it was bad, but
Mhm.
those that were, and 7 to 14, um,
Yeah,
whatever happened, got bullied, whatever it might be. Do
right.
you think that that had something to do with you not realizing the power of you?
Yeah, absolutely.
It,
Absolutely.
same here.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's true for all of us. I really do.
I agree.
And I think once there's awareness created and also the opportunity to dive in and do some exploring,
Hmm.
discovering of what those might be, then I think real change and real empowerment can happen for us.
For
Mm-hmm.
you navigating your loss and the grief involved in it, would you say hypnotherapy was somewhat of a game changer?
I okay, sorry, I missed out on that part. I think what you asked me was with my loss, would I say that hypnotherapy helped me navigate, would help navigate that? And yes, it's in working with clients who have been grieving, and a lot of clients that I work with, they're really unable to move past it. They're like stuck in it, and oftentimes there's emotions involved in that. It's guilt is often a big one. I feel guilty about maybe I wasn't there for them, or maybe the relationship wasn't a good one, or maybe, so I have guilt over that. Or, guilt can be a real barrier in moving through grief. And I think people hang on to that because of the fear of letting go. Because if I let go of, or if not, that you don't never ever let go, but if I move through this, to the other side of it, then what's left for me? I don't know I've lost complete connection to this person. And
Mm.
and so in hypnotherapy, it's wonderful because I get to help them go back to what's going on here. And, there'll be scenes that'll come up where, I didn't get to say goodbye. And I thought I had another day. I thought I had, and then feel guilty about that. And to be able to go back to those scenes, process them in the subconscious mind in that feeling place really is freeing. And then also talking about, how do you want to process this? Where do you want to see yourself whole on the other side of this loss? And in the recording, I put that in for them. We talk about their processing of the grief, and I give that back to them. And so they're getting that into their subconscious mind to help them process it in a healthy way, in a way that's acceptable to them and means something to them, and they can see it.
I can see something even just now in talking with you, Sabrina, about fear. So the fear of in a grieving situation, I don't want to say comfortable with it, but it presented itself, you're in it. So now
Mm-hmm.
to move away from it, I feel like I'm going to lose my connection to the
Yep.
person that passed,
Yeah.
or I don't know how to navigate this over here because I've never done it before. So I'm just going to stay in my grieving bubble
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
breaking free. And all those things in your
Mm-hmm.
bubble, you have the guilt, let's say you have kids, you want to start a
Yep.
new life, you have that, all of that floating around there.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just
Yeah.
stay here now. This is
Yep.
comfortable. We all love to be in a
Comfortable.
comfortable spot.
Right. Right. Safe. This is
Yeah.
safe.
Doesn't mean
Yeah.
it supports you the best, but
Right.
it's a known.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And so many of those reasons for that, we don't know why. It's just reactive, right? It's just responding to this. And so that's where hypnosis comes in and is so beneficial, because it gets to the root of that,
Hmm.
which is freeing. Hmm.
If you, let's say you had a passing many years ago, could you still be grieving and not really know it?
Oh, yeah. I've worked with clients who have been grieving for 20 plus years and not been able to move past it. And I think there may be some knowing to it, but not an understanding that it can be different,
Hmm.
right? So you know that this is still hurting you and this is still so painful, but maybe for me that's just how it's going to be, right? And so I think when people can hear other stories and be like, oh wow, okay, there is some freedom here for me. This can be different, and someone can help me to move past this pain and this loss in a healthy way, and still have the beautiful connection with that loved one that's, passed on.
I
Is
feel my mom passed 4 years ago, like to
mhm.
almost within a month.
Oh,
Um,
I'm
I
sorry for your
thanks.
loss.
I feel like I'm still connected even more
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yes,
And
yes,
she was older.
right.
It was unexpected. I found her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Um,
hard. Oof.
but I feel like I'm past it. Like
Mm-hmm.
and we had a good relationship, but I feel it's
Mm-hmm.
even stronger now. Like I talk
Yeah,
to her, I ask for
yeah,
signs, and I get them,
yes.
and they're very
That's so
specific.
healthy. Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not like I'm looking to see a butterfly go by. No, this is
Mm-mm.
specific. Like
Yes.
I can't even, it's almost crazy. And I
Yeah.
know it's coming from her. And that's
Yep.
that's that's how I roll. I'm sticking to
Yep.
that. And that's
Yep.
I've
It's
I'm
beautiful. Yeah.
I'm
I talk
skeptical.
to my mom and Chris all the time, and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yep.
I,
Yeah.
I believe if you ask for it, the universe is going to give it to you and
Yeah.
specific. And I will,
Yeah.
I'm skeptical. I look to punch holes in everything. Like, come on. But that one
If
day,
it's working,
okay. So one day, share this in 15 seconds.
yeah.
And this was the first big sign. And this was like 2 years ago. Had a very important life-changing meeting. Lots going down. Prayed
Mhm.
the night before. Said, Mom, help me
Mhm.
out. Just, show me it's going to be okay. Show me we're going to be okay with
Yeah.
this whole thing. Next morning, doing the same exact thing. I'm driving to the meeting that could be very pivotal. I'm like, Mom, just, I got to know it's going to be all right. And I pull in the parking lot. I look down at my console. I see my energy drink and I look on it and it's her birthday on the expiration date.
Goosebumps. Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm like, okay.
Yep.
And, friends will say, well, it's cool. It's a 1 in 365 chance. I got you on that. Pretty high odds here, but all right. But my other friend said to me, that's all cool. But the fact that you looked at that moment, who looks at expiration date?
Exactly.
Like, I'm throw it away, done. And it was exactly her date of birth.
That's beautiful.
So to me, that's
those
like,
little synchronicities.
That's a sign. To me, I'll say, I'm taking that as a sign. I don't care what anybody says.
Yep. And it does. It just like, it soothes your heart.
Yeah. Well, I know she's there, and I'm sure you've asked, you've gotten signs, when you need them,
Yep. Absolutely. The connection isn't lost.
The connection, and we're all energy, and the energy is around, and take it for what it is there. We're just about out of time. There's lots of people going through stuff, and I know that you're there, and especially with what you've gone through in terms of the grief, dare I say, I don't think anybody understands it better than you. And also the healing process and how to help others. If somebody's got questions and wants to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, sabrinaperez.com, and there's places to just click on a button to schedule an appointment to talk with me, and that's free. And there's my phone numbers, 503-676-3479. It's another way to reach me. And my social media links are on my website as well. So, Not
the most funnest topic, if that's a word. But I'm so glad we talked about it today. Off the scale necessary. And there's so many different types of grieving that we all go through at one point in life. And fortunately, you're there to help with hypnotherapy alone is fantastic. Been there, done that. I'm the hypnotherapy cheerleader over here, but also the coaching part, for grief too. And you do everything, but today we just centered on that. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. Thanks, Sabrina.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I appreciate you too.
And I look forward next time we get a chance to talk.
Okay, me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.